The arrow lodged between her ribs wasn't what would kill her. It was the second one she'd hear whistling through the trees any moment now. Ilara pressed her palm against the wound, feeling warm blood seep through her fingers, melting the snow beneath her stumbling feet. Each breath was a knife twisting deeper. The blizzard howled around her, wind biting exposed skin, turning her exhales into frozen clouds. Behind her, voices shouted through the storm. The hunters were gaining. "There! See the blood trail?" She can't have gone far, not with that shot. She recognized those voices, men who'd shared meals in her village, men whose children she'd healed from fever, whose wives she'd helped through difficult births. Now they hunted her like an animal because someone needed a scapegoat. And the healer who lived alone at the forest's edge made an easy target. Witchcraft, they'd called it. Dark magic. When old Thomas survived a plague that should have killed him, when Sarah's baby drew its first healthy breath after a breech birth, suddenly Ilara's skill wasn't a gift. It was something unnatural, something to fear, something to kill. Her foot caught on a hidden root, and she crashed forward, hands sinking into snow that came up past her wrists. The impact drove the arrow deeper. She bit back a scream, tasting copper. Her leather satchel had been lost hours ago when she'd first fled, taking with it her bandages, her herbs, any hope of treating this wound properly. She tried to rise. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. This was it then. She'd die here in the forbidden forest, alone and unforgiven. They'd probably say the wolves got her. Fitting justice for a witch, they'd murmur over their ale. No one would mention that the wolves had never harmed anyone, that the forest was forbidden by superstition, not danger. The wind shifted, carrying the hunters' voices closer. "Fan out! She's wounded, she'll hole up somewhere." Ilara crawled forward on her belly, leaving a crimson trail behind her. Just a little farther. Behind that outcropping of rocks, maybe. Somewhere to die with dignity instead of having Thomas Blackwell put an arrow through her heart while his friends watched. That's when she heard it. A whimper. Soft, pitiful, barely audible over the storm. "No, keep moving. You're dying anyway, don't be a fool." But her hands were already changing direction, pulling her body toward the sound. Years of responding to cries for help couldn't be undone by something as simple as mortal peril. The wolf cub lay beneath a fallen pine branch, its small body half buried in snow. It couldn't have been more than 8 weeks old, grey fur matted with ice, one hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Yellow eyes met hers, filled with pain and fear. Its chest heaved with rapid, panicked breaths. "Your pack left you," Ilara whispered, understanding immediately. Wolves didn't abandon their young lightly. Something had scattered them, probably the same hunters pursuing her. In the chaos, this little one had been caught and left behind. She should keep crawling. The hunters were maybe 200 yards away now, their shouts echoing off the trees. Instead, Ilara wrapped her freezing fingers around the branch and pulled. It didn't budge. She tried again, using her legs for leverage, ignoring the fire spreading through her chest. The wood shifted an inch. The cub whimpered again, trying to drag itself free and failing. "Shh," she breathed. "I've got you." One more pull. Her vision blurred at the edges, black spots dancing. The arrow grated against bone. But the branch lifted, and the cub scrambled out on 3 legs, collapsing in the snow beside her. Ilara ran her hands over its body with practiced efficiency, checking for other injuries. Just the leg. Broken, but clean. Survivable, if it had protection from the cold. If it had. Arrows hissed through the air. Time slowed. Ilara saw the deadly trajectory, saw where the shots would land. Without thinking, she threw herself over the cub, curling her body around its small frame. The first arrow punched through her shoulder. The second buried itself in her thigh. She didn't scream, didn't have the breath for it. Her world narrowed to keeping the cub covered, keeping it safe from the men who saw everything wild as an enemy. Got her. Stay back. She might have one last spell in her. Through the ringing in her ears, Ilara heard the crunch of boots on snow. Closer. Closer. The cub squirmed against her chest, its heartbeat rapid against her palm. At least she'd saved this one small thing. At least her last act hadn't been running. Then the ground shook. The footsteps stopped. Someone cursed, voice high with fear. A growl split the air, not the snarl of a common wolf, but something deeper, more ancient. A sound that rattled in the chest and turned blood to ice water. Ilara had heard wolves howl in the distance 1,000 times. This was nothing like that. This was the sound of something that didn't fear men or arrows or anything that walked on two legs. She tried to lift her head, but her body wouldn't respond anymore. Blood pooled beneath her, melting the snow into pink slush. The cub wriggled free from her loosening arms and limped toward the sound of that massive growl, yipping softly. What in God's name? Run! The hunters' voices dissolved into screams and scrambling footsteps, already distant, already fleeing. Ilara's vision dimmed. She felt warm breath on her face, saw something silver, eyes the size of dinner plates, glowing in the storm like twin moons. The last of her consciousness registered impossible size, impossible intelligence in that gaze. The cub was licking her face, its small tongue rough against her frozen skin. She felt herself being lifted, though by what she couldn't say, the pain faded to a distant throb. Good, she thought, as darkness closed in. At least the little one has family after all. The silver eyes watched her fade, and in their depths was something that looked almost like recognition. Then there was nothing but snow and silence, and the steady rhythm of breathing that wasn't her own. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Warmth was the first thing that registered. Not the biting cold of death, but genuine heat, the kind that sank deep into bones and coaxed frozen blood back to life. Ilara's eyes fluttered open to impossibility. She lay on furs so soft they felt like clouds, in a chamber that defied everything she knew about caves and dens. The walls were living stone, smooth as polished marble, veined with silver that pulsed with a faint rhythmic glow. Flames burned in sconces along the walls, but there was no wood, no oil, nothing feeding them. They simply existed, eternal and unwavering, casting dancing shadows across a ceiling carved with images of wolves running beneath stars. "I'm dead," she whispered. Her voice came out raw, throat burning. Not yet. She turned her head, slowly, because everything still hurt, and found a woman sitting beside her bed. No, not just a woman. As Ilara watched, the woman's eyes flashed amber, reflective like an animal's. Her movements were too fluid, too graceful, and when she smiled, her canines were just slightly too long. "Though you tried very hard," the woman continued, wringing out a cloth in a basin of steaming water. 3 arrows, severe blood loss, exposure, and, she paused, frowning, something else I'm still working to understand. Ilara tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest. "Easy." The woman pressed her back down with surprising strength. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. Your body needs time to heal, even with our help." "Where am I?" But even as she asked, Ilara knew. The cub. Those massive silver eyes. The wolves. "You're shifters." The woman's smile turned sad. "The creatures from your people's nightmares. I'm Lyra, pack healer, and you, Ilara of the Ash Village, are in more trouble than those arrows could ever cause." Before Ilara could process that, voices erupted from beyond an arched doorway, loud, angry, speaking in a language that sounded like growls shaped into words. Then they switched to common tongue. "Doesn't matter what she did. She's human. She reeks of that cursed village." A male voice, sharp with rage. And she saved my son. This voice was different, deeper, layered with an authority that made the stone walls seem to vibrate. Sacred law is clear, Soren. Sacred law was written before humans decided we were monsters to be hunted, before they murdered your mate in cold blood. The first voice again, closer now. That woman carries the smoke stench of the same village that killed our Luna. She could be a spy. She was dying when we found her. Hardly an effective infiltration strategy. Then she's a convenient corpse. Leave her in the snow and be done with it. Footsteps approached. Ilara's heart hammered as figures filled the doorway. The first was a man who looked carved from violence, tall and broad, with dark hair pulled back in a warrior's knot and scars crossing his bare arms. His eyes were cold amber, fixed on her with undisguised hatred. Behind him came the source of that commanding voice. Ilara forgot to breathe. He stood at least 6.5 feet tall, moving with the coiled grace of a predator. Massive shoulders, powerful build. But it wasn't his size that froze her in place. It was his eyes, those impossible silver eyes she'd seen in the storm, now set in a human face of devastating beauty. Sharp features, strong jaw shadowed with stubble, dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. He wore simple leather and fur, but he wore them like a king wore a crown. Because he was a king. She knew it in her bones. "You're awake." His voice washed over her, and something in her chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with arrow wounds. "Good. We have much to discuss." The scarred man, Soren, stepped forward. "We have nothing to discuss with human trash. Kieran, be reasonable. Beta, one word, quietly spoken." But Soren's mouth snapped shut. The big alpha moved closer, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "Do you know who you saved in that forest?" Ilara found her voice. "A cub. Just a cub that needed help." "My son." Kieran's expression remained unreadable. "Ash, the heir to the northern pack. When the hunters came, his guards scattered him to safety, but he was separated in the chaos. By the time I tracked his scent, you were already bleeding over him. Using your body as a shield against arrows meant for us. I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew." He crouched beside the bed, bringing those silver eyes level with hers. Up close, she could see flecks of ice blue in them, ancient and fathomless. "You saw a life in danger and you saved it at the cost of your own. That creates a debt, a sacred debt, that I, as Alpha, must repay." Soren's growl was almost feral. "You can't be serious." "Life debt supersedes pack law," Kieran said, not looking away from Ilara. "She lives under my protection until the debt is satisfied." "And how long will that take? Years? Decades?" Soren's voice dripped contempt. "She's human, weak, useless. What could she possibly offer that would balance saving the heir?" "That's for me to decide." Kieran stood, and the movement was so smooth it barely seemed human. "She stays. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally." The threat in those words was unmistakable. Soren's jaw worked, fury radiating from him in waves, but he said nothing more. A small sound from the doorway broke the tension. Ilara looked over to see the cub. No, a small boy now, maybe 4 years old, with dark hair and his father's silver eyes. He wore an oversized tunic and walked with a pronounced limp, one leg wrapped in bandages and splints. "Ash." Kieran's voice gentled instantly. "You should be resting." But the boy ignored him, limping straight to Ilara's bedside. He stared at her with huge, solemn eyes, then reached out and grabbed her hand with both of his small ones. "Mama saved me," he said clearly. The room went absolutely silent. Lyra's hand froze over the basin. Soren's expression shifted from anger to shock. Even Kieran seemed stunned, his eyes widening fractionally. "Ash hasn't spoken since his mother died," Lyra whispered. "Not one word in 8 months." The little boy squeezed Ilara's hand tighter. She was bleeding, lots of bleeding, but she saved me anyway. His lower lip trembled. Don't let them hurt her, Papa. Please. Something cracked in Kieran's careful composure. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they gleamed with moisture. No one will hurt her, little wolf, I promise. Ash climbed onto the bed, carefully, mindful of his splintered leg and her injuries, and curled up against Ilara's side like a puppy seeking warmth. She felt tears prick her own eyes as his small body relaxed against hers, trustingly. This is insane, Soren muttered. But his voice had lost its sharp edge. Even he seemed affected by the child's words. Lyra stood abruptly. Everyone out. My patient needs rest and I need to complete my examination. When no one moved, she pointed at the door. Now, that includes you, Alpha. Kieran's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. As my healer commands. He moved toward the door, then paused. Ilara? Welcome to Ravencrest Den. For better or worse, you're packed now. He left before she could respond, Soren trailing after him with one last, suspicious glare in her direction. Lyra waited until their footsteps faded, then turned back to Ilara with a grave expression. Let me see your arms. My arms? The arrows hit my chest and... Humour me. Confused, Ilara extended her arms. Lyra pushed up the sleeves of the nightgown someone had dressed her in and examined the skin carefully, running fingers along the inside of Ilara's elbows, her wrists, the soft skin of her inner arms. How long have you been unusually tired? Lyra asked quietly. Weak? Prone to illness? Years, but I assumed it was just... Ilara stopped. How did you know? These marks. Lyra traced a barely visible line of scar tissue. Old injection sites, faded but still detectable to shifter senses. And your blood. I've been analysing it while you slept. There are traces of blackroot poison, administered in small doses over a very long time. The world tilted. What? Someone's been poisoning you. Slowly, carefully, keeping you weak but not quite dead. If I had to guess... Lyra met her eyes. Someone you trusted completely. Someone who regularly had access to your body. Ilara's mind raced back through years of memory. The chronic fatigue she'd blamed on long hours. The frequent illnesses that never quite resolved. The way she'd needed more and more sleep, more rest, until simple tasks exhausted her. And the face that appeared in every memory, kind, grandmotherly Marta, the village's senior healer. The woman who'd trained Ilara, who'd given her strengthening tonics every week for the past 3 years. No, she whispered, Marta would never. Your Marta is the reason you nearly died in that forest, Lyra said bluntly. Without that poison weakening you, you might have survived those arrows long enough to reach proper shelter. She's been killing you by inches. But why? That I cannot answer. But Lyra's expression turned sympathetic. The poison was designed to be fatal. Eventually your body would have simply stopped fighting. Another few months, maybe a year at most, and you would have died in your sleep. Everyone would have said it was a weak constitution, a tragic loss. No one would have suspected murder. Ilara's hand went to her throat, feeling suddenly vulnerable. All those years, all that trust. Can it be reversed? With time and proper treatment, yes. Your body is already starting to heal now that you're no longer being dosed regularly. But you'll be weak for weeks yet, maybe months. Lyra squeezed her shoulder gently. Rest now. Process this later. Ash clearly isn't letting you go anywhere. She was right. The little boy had fallen asleep against Ilara's side, his small hand still clutching hers, his breathing deep and even. Despite everything, the impossible situation, the revelation about Marta, the danger she was clearly still in, Ilara felt herself relaxing. The child was warm, the bed was soft, and for the first time in years, She felt safe. Her eyes drifted closed as exhaustion claimed her once more. Outside the chamber, in a corridor carved from living stone, Kieran stood with his back against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. Soren waited nearby, arms crossed, expression unreadable now. She saved him, Kieran said quietly. She was dying, and she still saved him. I know, he spoke. After 8 months of silence, he spoke. I know, Soren's voice was gentler now, and he called her Mama. Kieran's jaw tightened. Don't. I'm not saying anything, just observing that your son has already decided her fate, regardless of what pack law dictates. Soren paused, and I saw your face when you looked at her, old friend. The life debt is one thing, but what I saw was something else entirely. She's human. She saved your son. She's from the village that murdered Sarah. She was also being murdered by her own people, Soren countered. Lyra's findings complicate things. If this woman was poisoned for years, hunted by her own kind, nearly executed in our forest, perhaps she's as much a victim as we are. Kieran said nothing. His mind kept returning to the moment he'd found her in the snow. This small, broken human curled protectively around his son, 3 arrows in her body, and still trying to shield Ash from harm. The scent of her blood mixing with snow. The way she'd looked at his son with such tenderness, even as death claimed her. And then, when she'd woken in his den, the way her eyes had widened when they met his, the way something in his chest had tightened in response, something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. No, he couldn't think like that. Life debt was sacred, yes, but anything more, impossible. His pack would never accept it. Soren was right to be suspicious. Humans had given them nothing but death and betrayal. But she saved Ash, his wolf whispered. Our son, our heir, she bled for him. From inside the chamber came the soft sound of Ash's sleepy voice and talking to someone in his dreams. Kieran closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. His son was speaking again. That alone was worth any complication this human might bring. Watch her, he told Soren, closely. If she's truly just a victim, we honour the life debt. But if there's even a hint that she's here for darker purposes, I'll end her myself, Soren promised. But Kieran, I think you should prepare yourself. For what? Soren's smile was knowing. For the possibility that she's exactly what she appears to be, and what that might mean for you. He walked away before Kieran could respond, leaving the Alpha alone in the corridor with his thoughts and the sound of his son's peaceful breathing drifting through the doorway. In the chamber, Ilara slept on, unaware of the storm she'd awakened in the heart of the Northern Pack's king. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 3. The first time Ilara heard the wolf's thoughts, she convinced herself she was hallucinating. It was her 5th day in Ravencrest Den, and she'd finally been cleared by Lyra to walk the corridors with Ash as her enthusiastic guide. The little boy had appointed himself her personal protector, limping along beside her on his healing leg, chattering about everything from the eternal flames, they're fed by the earth's heartbeat, Ilara, to the best spots to find spring water. They'd been passing through the Great Hall, a cavern so vast it could have swallowed her entire village, when 3 wolves padded in from a side tunnel. Real wolves, on 4 legs, silver and grey and black. Ash had waved at them cheerfully, but Ilara felt her body tense with instinctive fear. Then the thoughts hit her like a physical blow. The human again, clinging to the air like she has a right. Alpha's protection or not, she doesn't belong here. Smells wrong, too clean. Humans don't smell clean. Ilara stumbled, catching herself against the wall. The voices, because that's what they were, distinct voices, faded as the wolves passed, but the impression remained. She'd heard their thoughts, not words exactly, but meanings, emotions, impressions that her mind translated into language. "Are you okay?" Ash's small hand tugged at hers, concerned. "I'm fine, little wolf, just tired." But it wasn't the last time. Over the following days, it kept happening. A brush against a shifted wolf in the corridor, and suddenly she'd know they were worried about the upcoming hunt. Eye contact with one of Kieran's guards, and she'd feel his suspicion like acid on her tongue. During meals in the communal den, she'd be overwhelmed by the cacophony of pack emotions: joy, anger, fear, desire, all bleeding into her consciousness without permission. She tried to hide it, tried to convince herself it meant nothing. Humans didn't have connections to wolves. It was impossible. But the word impossible was losing meaning in Ravencrest Den. On the 10th day, she found Kieran in the training grounds, a massive, natural amphitheatre carved into the mountain's heart. He was in human form, shirtless and gleaming with sweat, sparring with Soren using wooden practice swords. Even exhausted and healing, Ilara couldn't help but stare. Every movement was fluid grace and lethal power, muscles shifting beneath scarred skin, silver hair falling into those devastating eyes. Then he glanced up and caught her watching. The wooden sword slipped from his grip. Soren's next strike would have caught him in the ribs if he hadn't dodged at the last second, but it was clumsy, distracted. "Your head's not in this," Soren observed, lowering his weapon. Again, Kieran agreed, but his eyes hadn't left Ilara's. She felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading outward, making her skin prickle with awareness. And beneath it, impossibly, she felt his wolf, huge, ancient, powerful, rising to the surface, fixing on her with predatory focus. Mine. The thought wasn't hers. It crashed through her mind in Kieran's voice, primal and possessive, and she gasped aloud. Kieran's eyes widened. He'd heard her reaction, knew she'd heard him. "I should go," Ilara stammered, backing away. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." She fled before he could respond, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard Soren's low voice. "You need to resolve this, brother, before it destroys you both." That night, Kieran came to her chamber. Ilara was sitting by the eternal flame, brushing out her hair, now clean and shining copper in the firelight, when he appeared in the doorway. He'd bathed since training, dressed in dark leather, but his hair was still damp and his feet were bare. Something about those bare feet made him seem more vulnerable, more real. "We need to talk," he said, "about what happened today. You heard my wolf." Not a question. He entered the room, closing the door behind him. "Don't deny it. I saw your face." Ilara set down the brush with trembling hands. "I don't understand what's happening to me. I hear things, feel things. The pack's emotions, their thoughts. It's getting stronger every day, and I don't know how to stop it." Kieran was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Humans don't have connections to wolf consciousness. It's biologically impossible. The only ones who can hear us in both forms are—" He trailed off, studying her with new intensity. "Other shifters. I'm not a shifter. I'm human. I've been human my entire life." "Have you?" He moved closer, each step deliberate. "Or have you been told you're human?" The question hung between them like smoke. Ilara wanted to dismiss it, to laugh it off, but doubt had been growing in her mind for days. The way her body was healing too fast, the connection to the wolves, the strange dreams she'd been having of running on 4 legs through moonlit forests. "This is insane," she whispered. "Is it?" Kieran stopped an arm's length away. "You saved my son. My wolf recognized something in you that day in the forest. I told myself it was gratitude, honor, the life debt. But it's more than that, isn't it? My wolf has chosen you as his mate." The word struck her like lightning. "That's impossible." "I know." His voice roughened. "And it's tearing me apart. Half my pack wants war with humans. Soren barely tolerates you. If I claim a human mate, they'll revolt. They'll demand a new alpha. Everything I've built will crumble. Then don't. The words hurt to say, but she forced them out. I'm grateful for your protection, but I won't be the reason your pack falls apart. When the life debt is satisfied, I'll leave. And go where? Kieran's laugh was bitter. Back to the humans who tried to murder you? The village where someone poisoned you for years? He reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. There's nowhere safe for you out there, Ilara. Not anymore. His touch sent electricity racing through her. She should step back, should remember who and what he was. Instead, she leaned into his palm, feeling the warmth of his skin, the calluses from sword work. Why me? She asked. Why would your wolf choose? The question died as his thumb traced her lower lip. His eyes had darkened to storm grey, pupils dilating. I don't know, but I dream of you. Every night since we brought you here, I dream of your scent, your voice, the way you smiled at Ash. And when I wake, my wolf is howling for you. Ilara's breath caught. Kieran. He leaned closer, and she knew he was going to kiss her. Knew she should stop him. Knew this could only end in disaster. She rose on her toes to meet him halfway. His lips touched hers, gentle at first, questioning. Then she opened her mouth and he made a sound like a growl, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her against his chest. He kissed like he fought. Total commitment. No hesitation. Drowning her in sensation until she couldn't remember why this was a bad idea. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. This is dangerous, he murmured. I know. My pack will never accept it. I know. But I can't seem to stay away from you. I know. She smiled against his mouth. Me either. He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. Then he forced himself to step back, putting distance between them. The blood moon rises tomorrow night. It's our most sacred ceremony, when the pack gathers to honour our ancestors and renew our bonds. His expression turned troubled. I want you there, under my protection. But Ilara, it will be dangerous. Some of my wolves don't hide their hatred of humans. I'll be careful. Promise me you'll stay close to me, no matter what happens. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. I promise. He left then, pausing at the door to look back at her with those silver eyes full of longing and conflict. When he was gone, Ilara touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Outside, the moon was rising, and she could have sworn she heard it calling her name. The blood moon ceremony took place in the highest cavern of Ravencrest Den, a cathedral of stone open to the sky, where silver moonlight poured through a natural oculus in the ceiling. The entire pack gathered, at least 200 wolves in human form, dressed in ceremonial furs and leather, faces painted with ash and ochre. Kieran stood at the centre in full regalia, a cloak of silver fur, a crown of antlers, his chest bare and marked with ritual symbols. He looked every inch the ancient king his bloodline proclaimed him to be. Ash sat nearby with Lyra, watching with huge, solemn eyes. Ilara stayed at the edge of the gathering, as Kieran had instructed. She wore a simple dress Lyra had given her, feeling desperately out of place among these beautiful, deadly creatures. The ceremony began with a howl, Kieran's voice rising to the open sky, pure and haunting. The pack joined him, human voices blending into something that sounded like music and thunder. The sound resonated in Ilara's bones, waking something deep inside her. Then the moon cleared the oculus, and its light spilled into the chamber like liquid silver. Pain exploded through Ilara's body. She gasped, doubling over as her bones began to shift. Not break, shift. Moving under her skin like they had minds of their own. Her hands spasmed, fingers curling as nails extended into claws. No, this isn't possible. Around her, Wolves were turning, staring. The howling died away. Kieran's eyes found hers across the chamber, wide with shock. Her spine arched. Fur, impossible silver fur, began pushing through her skin. The pain was excruciating, like being torn apart and rebuilt simultaneously. She tried to scream, but the sound came out as a whimper, then a howl. "Stop her!" Soren's voice sharp with alarm. "She's transforming. Humans can't transform." But she couldn't stop. Her body was betraying her, reshaping itself according to some blueprint written in her DNA. Bones cracked and reformed. Her face elongated into a muzzle. Her dress tore as her body expanded, covered now in thick silver fur that gleamed in the moonlight. When it finally ended, Ilara stood on 4 legs, panting, terrified. She could see everything with crystal clarity, every wolf in the chamber, their expressions ranging from shock to horror to something that looked like recognition. She was a wolf, a massive silver wolf with eyes that still held her human consciousness. "Impossible," someone breathed. Lyra pushed through the crowd, her healer's eyes sharp and analytical. She circled Ilara slowly, taking in every detail. Then she stopped, staring at a mark on Ilara's shoulder, a crescent moon birthmark that showed clearly through the silver fur. "Oh, ancestors," Lyra whispered. "It can't be." Kieran was there suddenly, kneeling before Ilara in wolf form, looking into her eyes. "What is she?" he demanded of Lyra. "Not what. Who?" Lyra's voice shook. "That mark, the silver fur. There's only one bloodline that carried both traits." She looked up at the assembled pack. "She's Shadow Pack, the line we thought was completely destroyed 15 years ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ilara's wolf instincts screamed at her to run, but Kieran's presence kept her rooted in place. "The Shadow Pack was massacred," Soren said flatly. "Every last member. We found the bodies ourselves." "Every member except one." An ancient voice spoke from the shadows. An elderly female wolf stepped forward, her fur gone white with age. The Alpha's daughter. She was barely 6 months old when the humans attacked. Her mother used forbidden magic with her dying breath. Blood magic, soul magic. Magic that could hide a wolf so completely that even she wouldn't know what she was. The old wolf fixed milky eyes on Ilara. The magic had a price. The child would need someone to maintain the spell, to keep dosing her with a suppression poison that would bind her wolf and fog her memories. Someone who could watch her, control her, make sure she never became a threat. Understanding crashed through Ilara like a tidal wave. Martyr. The poisoning. The weakness. It had all been deliberate, not to kill her, but to keep her hidden. "But who would want the last shadow bloodline hidden?" Kieran demanded. "Who would benefit?" "I would." The voice came from the entrance to the chamber. Wolves scattered as a figure emerged from the shadows. A male, tall and powerful, with dark fur and amber eyes that gleamed with malice. "Theron," Kieran growled, his wolf rising. "You dare interrupt a sacred ceremony?" "I dare much more than that, cousin." Theron smiled, and it was a predator's smile. "Did you really think I'd let the shadow bloodline resurface? The same line that holds claim to the Northern Territories by ancient right? The same line that could challenge your rule with a single word?" Soren moved to flank Kieran, teeth bared. "You're admitting to conspiracy?" "I'm admitting to intelligence." Theron's eyes fixed on Ilara. "When I discovered a shadow infant had survived, I made arrangements. The human village was easy to manipulate. They'd already harboured hatred for our kind. I placed the child with a woman who could be bought, who would keep her weak and ignorant. I paid well for her silence." "Martyr," Ilara thought, and her wolf voice echoed in every shifter's mind. Clear, strong, furious. "The healer, yes." Theron circled closer. "She was supposed to let you die quietly before your first shift, but you were always stronger than you should have been. Survived longer than predicted. So when you fled the village, I made sure the hunters had good aim. You tried to have her killed. Kieran's voice was deadly quiet. You violated pack law, conspired with humans, attempted to murder the last of the shadow line. I did what was necessary to protect my claim, Theron snarled. The Shadow Pack held these territories for generations before your bloodline took power. With them gone, there was no one to challenge you. But if she lives, if her identity becomes known, suddenly your authority is questioned. Suddenly there's another option for Alpha. Wolves were growling now, the sound building. But whether they were angry at Theron or considering his words, Elara couldn't tell. You would fracture this pack over ancient bloodlines? Kieran demanded. I would save this pack from your weakness. Theron's control was slipping, his voice rising. You protect a human, or what we thought was human. You neglect your duties to play nursemaid to your motherless cub. You refuse to lead us to war against the villages that slaughter our kind. The pack needs strength, Kieran. Not sentiment. The pack needs unity. Kieran's power filled the chamber, making the air crackle. And you've just confessed to conspiracy, murder and treason. By pack law, the penalty is death. Theron's smile was cold. By pack law, any wolf can challenge for Alpha. And I challenge you now, Kieran Stormborn, fight me for leadership of the Northern Pack. Winner takes all, including the right to decide what to do with our newfound Shadow Princess. The chamber erupted in howls, some of excitement, some of dismay. Ash's frightened cry cut through the noise. Papa! Kieran's eyes met Elara's across the chaos. In them, she saw determination, fury, and something that looked like an apology. I accept your challenge, he said quietly, then louder for the pack. At dawn, we fight, and the victor leads. Theron's laugh was triumphant. At dawn. Then, try not to spend your last night saying goodbye to your pet wolf. He left, taking a contingent of wolves with him, more than Elara had expected. At least 30 followed in his wake, their expressions hard and unforgiving. When they were gone, the remaining pack began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Lyra hurried to Elara's side, running gentle hands over her fur. The shift triggered by blood moon magic will hold until dawn, she explained quietly. You'll change back when the moon sets. Are you hurt? Elara shook her wolf head. Physically, she felt powerful, whole. Like pieces of herself she'd never known were missing had suddenly clicked into place. But emotionally, she was drowning. She wasn't human, had never been human. Everything she'd believed about herself was a lie, built on forbidden magic and poison. Kieran approached, still in wolf form. He pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture of comfort and connection. Through the touch, she felt his emotions clearly, concern, protectiveness, and beneath it all, that fierce, possessive certainty. Mine. Come, he said, shifting back to human. We have much to discuss before dawn. And Elara? He waited until her wolf eyes met his. Whatever you were, whatever you are, whatever bloodline runs through your veins, it changes nothing. You saved my son. You hold my heart. And tomorrow I'll fight to keep you safe. But as she followed him from the chamber, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that Theron's challenge was only the beginning. Someone had hidden her for 15 years. Someone had wanted the shadow bloodline erased completely. And she had a sinking feeling she was about to discover exactly why. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4, Dawn Came Too Quickly, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Elara had shifted back to human form as the blood moon set, her body aching from the transformation, but feeling more alive than ever before. She'd spent the remaining hours of darkness in Kieran's private chambers, learning what it meant to be Shadowpack, the history, the power, the reason her bloodline had been feared and revered in equal measure, Shadow wolves were mediators, Kieran had explained, his voice rough with exhaustion. They could sense truth from lies, could walk through pack bonds and heal rifts. Your ancestors prevented wars simply by existing. When your pack was massacred, the balance shattered. Territories that had been peaceful for generations erupted into conflict. And Theron wants to make sure that balance never returns, Ilara had murmured, watching the sky lighten through the chamber's opening. Now, standing in the ritual circle as the pack gathered for the challenge, she understood the true weight of what she represented. Not just another wolf, not just another alpha's claim. She was the living embodiment of a power that could reshape everything. The challenge ground was an ancient stone circle in the heart of Ravencrest Den, open to the sky. Hundreds of wolves surrounded it in both forms, their tension thick enough to taste. Ash clung to Lyra's hand on one side of the circle, his small face pale, but determined. Other pups huddled with their mothers, sensing the danger. Kieran stood at the centre, bare-chested despite the morning cold, muscles coiled with deadly readiness. He'd tied his silver-streaked hair back, revealing the ritual marks painted across his chest and face, symbols of leadership, of legitimacy, of power earned through blood and sacrifice. Across from him, Theron prowled in wolf form, massive and dark, lips pulled back to reveal fangs that could tear through steel. "Before we begin," Kieran's voice rang out, carrying to every corner of the circle, "I want it known that this challenge is built on lies and treason. Theron has admitted to conspiracy with humans, to the attempted murder of a shadow bloodline heir. Enough." Theron's growl came from multiple throats, his supporters, at least 40 strong, spread throughout the crowd. "You speak of treason while you shelter a human who carries the stench of the village that murdered your mate." "She isn't human," Kieran said quietly, dangerously. "As you well know, cousin, since you've spent 15 years ensuring she never discovered the truth." "What I know," Theron snarled, "is that you're too weak to lead. You forgive humans who slaughter us. You waste resources protecting outsiders. You let sentiment cloud your judgment. The pack needs strength, not mercy." Howls of agreement rose from Theron's supporters, but an equal number of wolves growled in defense of their alpha. The pack was fracturing before Ilara's eyes. Then Soren stepped forward. Kieran's beta moved with his characteristic warrior's grace, but something was wrong. His expression was too neutral, too carefully blank. He positioned himself not at Kieran's side, where a beta belonged, but at the edge of the circle, equidistant between both challengers. "There's something you all should know before this challenge proceeds," Soren said, his voice carrying easily. "Something I've kept silent about for too long." Kieran's eyes narrowed. "Soren, what are you—" "Theron speaks truth about our alpha's weakness," Soren continued, and the words fell like stones into still water. "But he doesn't go far enough. Because Kieran's weakness isn't recent, it's generational. It started with his father's choice to unite the packs through conquest rather than cooperation. To destroy the Shadow Line rather than acknowledge their rightful claim to these territories." The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. Ilara felt ice forming in her veins. "I was there," Soren said, his voice rising, 25 years ago, when Kieran's father led the assault on Shadowpact territory. They called it unification. I call it murder. And I was betrothed to the Shadow Alpha's eldest daughter, a woman who died screaming as Kieran's father's wolves tore through our home. Kieran had gone very still. "You never said—" "What could I say?" Soren's laugh was bitter. "I was young, newly bound to your father's service through blood oath, forced to watch as everything I loved burned. So I waited. I planned. I became your father's most trusted warrior, then yours when you took the crown. And I made sure that when the time came, the Stormborn line would pay for what they'd taken from me." Understanding crashed through Ilara like an avalanche. "You killed Sarah," she whispered, "Kieran's mate. You arranged it." Soren's smile was cold. The humans were easy to manipulate. A few suggestions, some carefully placed information about a female wolf travelling alone with her guards. They did the rest. His eyes fixed on Kieran, who looked like he'd been struck. I wanted you to feel it, brother. The loss, the helplessness, the rage of having your mate torn away by senseless violence. You were my beta, Kieran's voice cracked. My friend. I trusted you with my son's life. And I kept him safe, Soren said, until the perfect moment to let him die, making sure you'd be too broken to lead effectively. But that meddling human? His eyes cut to Ilara. The shadow cub I'd paid so well to keep hidden somehow survived her poisoning long enough to save him. Fate has a cruel sense of humour. Lyra had moved protectively in front of Ash, who was crying silently. Around the circle, wolves were growling, shifting uneasily. This was beyond pack politics now. This was blood betrayal of the deepest kind. The blood oath, Kieran said hoarsely. When you swore as beta, you swore on your life to protect this pack, to protect my line. You can't. I swore to your father's face while planning his line's destruction, Soren interrupted. The oath means nothing to me. And now, I claim what should have been mine from the beginning. He shifted, his form blurring and expanding into a wolf even larger than Theron. Rust-coloured, scarred, ancient with suppressed rage. I challenge for Alpha. Not just of the Northern Pack, but of all territories that once belonged to Shadow and Stormborn alike. Winner takes everything. Loser dies. That's not pack law, Lyra protested. A beta can't challenge. I renounce my beta bond. Soren's words were ritual, formal, irrevocable. As he spoke them, Ilara saw something like a chain of light snap around Kieran's chest, making him stagger. I am no longer beta. I am a lone wolf claiming leadership by right of grievance and strength, and I say Kieran Stormborn's line ends today. The wolves that had supported Theron suddenly shifted formation, moving to flank Soren instead. More joined them, at least half the pack, maybe more. Ilara realised with growing horror that Soren had been planning this for years, gathering supporters, nursing grievances, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kieran straightened, though she could see the pain from the broken beta bond radiating through him. You want to kill me for my father's sins? Fine, but you leave Ash out of this. He's innocent. He's Stormborn, Soren snarled. None of that bloodline is innocent. Before anyone could react, 3 of Soren's wolves broke from the circle, charging toward where Lyra stood protecting Ash. The healer shifted instantly, putting her wolf form between them and the cub, but she was outnumbered and outmatched. Ilara moved without thinking. She'd never tried to shift voluntarily before, had no training, no control. But Ash's terrified scream cut through every doubt and hesitation. Her body responded to pure instinct, bones flowing like water, fur erupting, senses exploding into crystalline clarity. She hit the first attacker mid-leap, silver fur flashing in the morning sun. Her jaws found his throat and she tasted blood, felt his shock as she threw him aside with strength she shouldn't possess. The second wolf skidded to avoid her, but Ilara was already moving, all her healer's knowledge of anatomy translating into knowing exactly where to strike to disable without killing. The third wolf was smarter. He circled, looking for an opening while his packmates regrouped. Ilara stood over Ash's small human form, feeling the cub's hands clutching her fur, hearing his whispered prayer. Mama, please, please. I've got you, she sent to him, hoping he could hear her wolf voice. I'll always protect you. More of Soren's wolves were moving toward them now. 5, 10, 20. This wasn't a challenge anymore. It was an execution. Ilara, run! Kieran's voice was desperate. He was locked in combat with Soren, both massive wolves tearing at each other with brutal efficiency. Blood stained the stone circle. Take Ash and run. But there was nowhere to run. They were surrounded. Lyra limped to her side, one leg clearly broken, but her teeth still bared in defiance. "If we're dying," she panted, "we die protecting the air." Ilara's mind raced. She was untrained, outnumbered, facing wolves with decades of combat experience. In a straight fight, they'd be dead in minutes. But she wasn't just a wolf. She was Shadowpack, a healer. And she carried her mother's forbidden magic in her blood. Magic that had kept her hidden for 15 years. Magic that could reshape reality itself if she was willing to pay the price. "Use it," a voice whispered in her mind. Ancient, feminine, achingly familiar. Her mother's voice, preserved in the magic that bound her wolf. "The power is yours by birthright. Speak the words I left within you, and you can end this. You can destroy every wolf who threatens your cub." Ilara felt the words rising in her throat, power building in her chest like a storm. She could feel how the magic worked, blood and bone and will combined, reshaping the world according to her desire. She could kill them all, could protect Ash with absolute certainty. But the voice continued, softer now. "The price is yourself. The human memories, the human heart, the human compassion, all of it will burn away, leaving only the wolf, only the power, only the ancient rage of our massacred people. She'd lose everything. The memories of her childhood, twisted as they were. Her years as a healer, helping the sick. The feel of Kieran's kiss. The person she'd become through all those years of unknowing. She'd become a weapon. Nothing more. "Mama?" Ash's small voice broke through the magic seduction. "You're still my mama, no matter what. Don't go away, please don't go away." The words shattered something inside her. Ilara looked at the cub, Kieran's son, her son in all the ways that mattered, and saw his silver eyes filled with tears and trust. He wasn't asking her to use forbidden magic, wasn't asking her to become a monster to save him. He was asking her to stay herself. Across the circle, Kieran and Soren were still locked in combat, both bloodied, both flagging. Kieran was alpha, powerful and skilled, but Soren had decades of suppressed rage fueling him, and the broken beta bond had weakened Kieran more than he'd admit. Ilara made her choice. No, she told the magic, told her mother's ghost. There's another way. She reached deep inside herself, past the wolf and the human, to the place where both merged. She was a healer who could sense pain, a shadow wolf who could walk through pack bonds, an untrained fighter with anatomical knowledge other wolves lacked, and she'd spent 15 years learning how to survive, despite being poisoned and weakened. "Lyra," she said, her wolf voice clear, "can you link me to the pack bond? All of them?" The healer's eyes widened. "That's advanced magic. You've never trained. Can you or not? If I open the channel, it'll hurt. You'll feel every wolf's emotions simultaneously. It could break your mind. Do it anyway." Lyra pressed her muzzle against Ilara's, and suddenly the world exploded into sensation. 200 wolves. Their thoughts and feelings crashing through her consciousness like a tsunami. Fear, rage, confusion, bloodlust, grief, pain. It was overwhelming, excruciating, impossible to process. But underneath the chaos, she felt something else. Threads of connection between pack members, bonds of loyalty, friendship, family. And running through everything, twisted and infected like poison in a wound, was Soren's influence. Years of carefully planted suggestions, nurtured grievances, manipulated pain. He'd broken this pack from the inside out. Ilara reached for those poisoned bonds with her healer's instinct. She couldn't fight 20 wolves, but she could show them the truth. She pulled Soren's memories, his decades of planning, his murder of Sarah, his conspiracy to kill Ash, and she broadcast them through the pack bond. Not as words, but as living experience, undeniable and visceral. The attacking wolves stumbled, their charge breaking as Soren's true nature flooded their minds. Shock rippled through the crowd. Howls of betrayal and rage rose from wolves who'd followed him thinking they served pack justice. "You lied to us," one of Soren's supporters snarled, rounding on the former beta. "You said Kieran was weak, that he'd abandoned pack law. You never said you murdered our Luna, that you've been planning our Alpha's death for years, that you tried to kill the heir." Soren's attention fractured as his support crumbled. It was only a moment's distraction, but Kieran was Alpha for a reason. His jaws found Soren's throat, bearing down with lethal intent. "Wait," Ilara's voice rang out, human words from a wolf's throat. Impossible, but she did it anyway. Kieran paused, though his teeth remained at Soren's jugular. Ilara shifted back to human, standing naked and bloody in the centre of the circle with Ash clutching her leg. She looked at Soren, broken, beaten, his decades of rage finally exposed. "Your grief was real," she said quietly. "The Shadowpack princess you loved, she was my aunt. Her death was murder, just like my mother's death, just like the death of everyone I should have known." She felt tears on her cheeks. "You had every right to grieve, to rage, to demand justice." Soren's wolf eyes were fixed on her, unreadable. "But you became the very thing that destroyed us," Ilara continued. "You murdered innocents. You manipulated good wolves into serving your revenge. You would have killed a child." Her voice hardened. "That's not justice. That's just more death feeding more death. Forever." She turned to address the entire pack. Shadowpack fell because wolves chose violence over peace, because grief turned into rage, and rage into massacre. My mother used her last breath to hide me, so that cycle might end with her generation. She looked at Kieran, at his silver eyes watching her with something like awe. But it didn't end. It's still here, poisoning everything, and it will keep poisoning us until we choose differently. "What are you saying?" Lyra asked softly. "I'm saying Soren deserves to die by pack law, but I'm also saying that if we kill him, we prove him right. That strength is just violence, that leadership is just dominance, that the only way to resolve pain is through more pain." Kieran released Soren's throat, shifting to human form. Blood covered his chest from a dozen wounds. But he stood with Alpha authority. "What would you have me do, Ilara? He murdered my mate, tried to murder my son, betrayed everything a beta is sworn to protect." "Exile him," Ilara said. "Strip him of pack bonds, of territory, of everything that makes him pack. Let him live alone with his grief and his choices. That's punishment enough." "That's mercy he doesn't deserve," someone shouted from the crowd. "Maybe," Ilara agreed. "But mercy is what makes us different from the humans who hunted me, from the wolves who massacred my family. We can choose to be better." She walked toward Soren, who'd shifted back to human now, kneeling in the blood-stained stone. She crouched before him, meeting his hate-filled eyes. "I forgive you," she said simply. Soren flinched like she'd struck him. "What?" "For my aunt, for my pack. For the years of poison and pain and attempted murder." Tears were flowing freely now. "I forgive you, not because you've earned it, but because I won't let your rage poison my future the way it poisoned your past." For a long moment, Soren just stared at her. Then something cracked in his expression. Decades of hate fracturing to reveal the grieving young wolf underneath, the one who'd lost everything when Kieran's father attacked. He began to weep. Kieran stepped forward, his voice formal and final. "Soren, formerly beta of the Northern Pack, I strip you of pack bonds and exile you from these territories. You have until sunset to leave. If you return, the mercy Ilara offers will not extend from me. I will kill you myself." The words resonated with Alpha power, binding and irrevocable. Soren's wolf, already weakened from the broken beta bond, shattered completely. He'd never shift again, would never feel pack bonds, would never be anything but a lone human living in wolf territory. It was, Ilara realized, a fate worse than death for a wolf. Soren pulled himself to his feet with dignity, though, meeting Kieran's eyes. "You've chosen well," he said hoarsely, nodding toward Ilara. "Shadowblood always knew how to end wars." He turned to the assembled pack. "Those of you who followed me, I release you. I used your pain for my revenge. That's my sin to bear." He walked from the circle alone, aging with each step, and disappeared into the forest. The pack was silent for a long moment. Then Lyra threw back her head and howled, not in mourning, but in celebration. Others joined her, the sound building until it shook the stones themselves. They were howling for their alpha, for the heir who'd been protected, for the shadow wolf who'd found a third path. Kieran pulled Ilara into his arms, mindless of their nakedness, of the blood, of the watching pack. "You're magnificent," he breathed against her hair, terrifying and magnificent. "I'm just a healer who got lucky," she said, but she was smiling. "No." He pulled back to look at her, silver eyes blazing. "You're the wolf who saved my son, who exposed a traitor, who united a broken pack with mercy instead of violence. You're shadow and healer, and the bravest thing I've ever seen." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And you're my mate if you'll have me. My equal, my other half." Before Ilara could answer, Ash wriggled between them, wrapping his small arms around both. "Mama stays," he announced to the pack. "She's ours now. Forever." Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the last of the tension. Ilara felt it through the pack bond. Acceptance, cautious but genuine. They'd seen her choose mercy when violence was easier, seen her protect their heir, seen her reject forbidden power to stay herself. She was pack now, truly pack. "Forever," Kieran agreed, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "If she'll have us." Ilara looked around at the wolves, her wolves now somehow, and at the little boy beaming up at her, and at the male who'd become her heart without her noticing. "Forever," she said, and meant it. The pack howled their approval, the sound carrying across the mountains, announcing to any who could hear. The shadow bloodline had returned, and with it a new kind of strength. Not dominance, not violence, but something far more powerful, the courage to choose compassion when the world demands blood. And in the den of Ravencrest, in the heart of the Northern Territories, a healer who'd been poisoned to stay weak finally embraced her full strength, not through forbidden magic or ancient rage, but through the simple revolutionary act of remaining herself. The scarlet snow had melted, and in its place, new life was beginning to bloom. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Epilogue, Silver Moon rising 3 years later. The first snow of winter fell soft and silent over Ravencrest Den, transforming the mountain into something from a fairy tale. Ilara stood at the entrance of the healing chambers, watching fat flakes drift past the eternal flames that had become as familiar to her as breathing. Behind her, the sound of children's laughter echoed through the stone corridors. "Mama, Papa says you have to come now, or the ceremony will start without you." She turned to find Ash, no longer so little at 7 years old, racing toward her with the boundless energy only wolf pups possessed. His leg had healed perfectly, though he still limped slightly when tired. He wore ceremonial furs too big for his frame, his dark hair freshly braided with silver thread, his father's eyes bright with excitement. "Does he now?" Ilara smiled, crouching to adjust his cloak. "And what if I said I was too busy? I have 3 wolves in labour, 2 pups with winter fever, and old Garrett's arthritis acting up again. Then Papa would come get you himself, and you know how he gets when you make him wait." Ash grinned, the expression so like Kieran's it made her heart squeeze. "Besides, everyone's already gathered. Even the shadow wolves came from the Eastern Territories." shadow wolves. The phrase still felt surreal sometimes. In the 3 years since Soren's exile and Ilara's acceptance into the Northern Pack, something remarkable had happened. Word had spread through the territories that the shadow bloodline had returned, not to claim dominance, but to offer what her ancestors had once provided: mediation, healing, truth. Wolves from scattered packs had come seeking her help. Territorial disputes that might have ended in bloodshed were resolved through her ability to sense truth from lies, to walk through pack bonds and find common ground. Slowly, carefully, a new shadow pack had formed, not through birthright or conquest, but through wolves who chose to follow her philosophy of strength through compassion. They'd established their own territory in the Eastern Mountains, close enough to the Northern Pack for alliance, far enough for autonomy. Lyra led them as alpha, with Ilara serving as their healer and advisor. The arrangement was unconventional, but it worked. "All right, little wolf." Ilara kissed his forehead. "Let me check on my patients one more time, then I'm all yours." She made her rounds quickly, adjusting herbs for the labouring mothers, cooling fevered brows, massaging aching joints. This was her purpose, what she'd been meant to do, whether human or wolf: ease suffering, bring comfort, heal what was broken. When she finally emerged into the great hall, her breath caught. The massive cavern had been transformed. Thousands of winter flowers, cultivated in the den's hot springs, cascaded from the walls. The eternal flames burned brighter somehow, casting everything in warm gold light. And wolves, hundreds of them, from a dozen different packs, filled every available space, all dressed in ceremonial finery. At the centre, beneath an arch of antlers and silver birch, stood Kieran. Even after 3 years as his mate, the sight of him still made her pulse race. He wore the full regalia of the Alpha King: furs of silver and black, the ancient crown of antlers, ritual marks painted across his bare chest. But it was his eyes that held her, those impossible silver eyes that had saved her life in a blizzard, that had seen past what she was to who she could become. He smiled as she approached, and the expression transformed his warrior's face into something tender. "You're late," he murmured as she reached him. "I'm a healer. I don't get to pick my schedule." "One of the many things I love about you." He took her hands, and even that simple touch sent warmth flooding through her. "Ready?" For a formal alliance ceremony witnessed by every major pack in the territories, absolutely terrified. His laugh rumbled through her. "That's my brave wolf." The ceremony began with traditional howls, the pack's way of calling witnesses, of binding the moment into collective memory. Then Lyra stepped forward, representing the Shadow Pack. And Soren's replacement as Beta, a steady female named Kira, represented the Northern Pack. What followed was historic. The formal alliance between Shadow and Northern territories, acknowledging shared leadership and mutual protection. No conquest, no subjugation. Just 2 packs choosing to be stronger together than apart. Other pack leaders came forward to pledge their own alliances, smaller territories that wanted to be part of this new way of existing, where strength meant more than just the ability to kill. When it was done, when the vows were spoken and the bonds sealed through ritual and magic, Kieran pulled Ilara close and kissed her soundly, to the pack's enthusiastic howls. "Now, for the real surprise," he whispered against her lips, before she could ask what he meant. Movement at the edge of the crowd caught her attention. A figure emerged, human in form, but moving with a wolf's grace, leaning heavily on a walking stick. Rust-coloured hair gone grey, face lined with years of hard living. Soren. Ilara's breath stopped. She felt Kieran tense beside her, though he didn't move to intercept. The former Beta approached slowly, carefully, showing no threat. When he reached them, he dropped to one knee. The gesture of a wolf acknowledging an alpha's authority. "I ask permission to speak," he said hoarsely. Kieran's voice was cold. You were exiled. You shouldn't be here. I know, and after I speak I'll go, but… Soren raised his eyes to Ilara's. I needed her to know. 3 years ago she offered me something I didn't deserve. Mercy? Forgiveness? I've spent these years alone thinking about that. About what she said. That grief turned into rage, turns into more death. Forever. His hands trembled on the walking stick. I can't undo what I've done. Can't bring back Sarah, or give Kieran back the years of friendship I poisoned with lies. But I wanted to say, his voice cracked, thank you for showing me there was another way, even if it's too late for me to walk it. Ilara stepped forward, ignoring Kieran's warning growl. She crouched before Soren, looking into eyes that had once burned with hate, but now just looked tired and old. It's never too late, she said softly. Not for anyone. I'm no longer pack. I have no bonds, no territory. I'm nothing. You're a wolf who's suffered and caused suffering, who's learned hard lessons. She glanced back at Kieran, saw the conflict in his face, the alpha's need for justice warring with his mate's compassion. Maybe it's time to stop being nothing. Ilara, Kieran's voice held warning. I know what I'm asking. She stood, moved back to his side. But isn't that what this whole alliance is about? Finding new ways forward? Choosing mercy when revenge is easier? The silence in the great hall was absolute. Every wolf watched, waiting to see what their alpha would do. Kieran studied Soren for a long moment, then sighed. 3 years ago, my mate saved my son and taught my pack that strength comes in many forms. She was right then. I have to trust she's right now. He raised his voice so all could hear. Soren, your exile is lifted. You may petition to rejoin Packlands, not as beta, but as a lone wolf seeking shelter. You will be watched. You will be tested. And if you betray this mercy, there will be no third chance. Soren's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve. No, Kieran agreed. You don't. But my mate believes in redemption, and I believe in her. His expression hardened. Don't make me regret this. Soren nodded, unable to speak, and retreated back into the crowd. Ilara saw several wolves make room for him, offering tentative acceptance. It would be a long road, but it was a road. That was something. The ceremony concluded with a feast that lasted well into the night. Ilara made her rounds, speaking with visiting alphas, checking on the pups who'd eaten too much sweet bread, settling minor disputes before they could escalate. She found Kieran eventually on one of the high balconies, looking out over the snow-covered mountains. The moon was full and bright, painting everything silver. Thinking deep thoughts? She asked, slipping her arms around him from behind. Thinking how different things are from 3 years ago. He covered her hands with his. How I found a dying human in the snow and somehow ended up with the most remarkable mate in the territories. You still think I'm remarkable when I'm elbow deep in someone's infected wound? Especially then. He turned to pull her close, resting his chin on her head. You changed everything, Ilara. Not just for me, but for all of us. The way we think about strength, about leadership, about what it means to be pack. We changed it together, she corrected. You could have killed me that day in the forest, could have refused the life debt, could have executed me when my identity was revealed, but you chose mercy every time. That's what changed things, because you showed me it was possible. His arms tightened around her. Before you, I led through dominance, through being the strongest, the most powerful, the most willing to kill. But you led through compassion, through healing, through seeing the good in wolves who tried to murder you, and somehow that was more powerful than anything I'd ever done. Ilara smiled against his chest. We make a good team. The best team. He pulled back to look at her, silver eyes gleaming in the moonlight. I have something for you. Kieran, you've already given me everything. A home, a family, a pack. This is different. He pulled a small wrapped bundle from his belt, pressed it into her hands. Open it. Inside was a necklace of silver and moonstone, carved with symbols she recognized as shadow pack markings, the ancient writing of her ancestors. But intertwined with them were Northern Pack symbols. The two bloodlines merged into something new. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's pack history, Kieran explained, fastening it around her neck. Every alpha's mate receives one, carved with the story of how they came to the pack. Yours tells of a healer who saved an heir, who chose mercy over revenge, who united divided territories through compassion. His fingers lingered on her throat. And of an alpha who found his heart in a blizzard, disguised as a dying human. Tears pricked Ilara's eyes. I love you, she whispered. So much it scares me sometimes. Good, because I love you enough to change everything I thought I knew about strength and leadership, about what makes a good alpha, a good father, a good wolf. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're my mate, my equal, my best self. A small voice interrupted from the doorway. Are you two being mushy again? They turned to find Ash watching them with fond exasperation, and beside him, Ilara's heart squeezed, a tiny girl with Kieran's silver eyes and Ilara's copper hair. Luna, barely 6 months old, their miracle daughter born of two bloodlines that shouldn't have been able to merge. Always, Kieran told his son, scooping up the baby girl, who immediately grabbed his hair and giggled. Your mother makes me mushy. Gross, Ash declared, but he was smiling. Come on, the pups want to hear the story again, about how Mama saved me in the forest. That story again? Ilara laughed. They must know it by heart. They like the scary parts. And the part where Papa's eyes were as big as moons when he realized Mama was Shadow Pack. Ash grabbed her hand, tugging. Please? Just once more? How could she refuse? This was her family. The grumpy, affectionate boy who'd called her Mama before anyone else, the tiny daughter who represented an impossible future, the mate who'd seen past what she was to who she could become. They returned to the great hall together, to the pack that had become her pack, to the home that had started in a scarlet snow and bloomed into something miraculous. As she settled among the pups with Luna in her arms and Ash pressed against her side, as Kieran's hand found hers and squeezed gently, Ilara thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, poisoned, exiled, dying in a blizzard. That girl had thought she was saving a wolf cub. She hadn't known she was saving herself. Once upon a time, she began, as the pups settled in with eager faces, there was a healer who forgot she was a wolf, and a wolf who forgot that the strongest thing he could do was love. And in the heart of Ravencrest Den, surrounded by family and pack and hope, Ilara told the story of how the scarlet snow had brought her home. The children listened with wide eyes, the adults listened with knowing smiles, and somewhere in the forest beyond, a lone rust-coloured wolf raised his muzzle to the silver moon and howled, not in grief this time, but in gratitude for second chances and the wolves brave enough to offer them. The pack howled back, their voices weaving together into a song of unity and strength and the revolutionary power of choosing compassion over violence. And the mountains remembered, and the moon blessed them, and the story became legend of the healer who became a wolf, the alpha who chose mercy, and the pack that learned strength comes not from dominance, but from the courage to protect what matters most: love, family, home. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and like this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to know the country in which you are in, listening to this story. Which country is that? Please comment below.